Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Harper, Ms. Pryor, Mr. Hernstadt, welcome to the committee. Mr. Harper has served on the NCUA's bipartisan board since being confirmed in 2019. Before he was named NCUA's chair in January of 21, he appeared to have a reasonable approach to regulation and a good working relationship with his colleagues. However, since being named chair, it seems that Mr. Harper has been prioritizing the administration's global warming agenda in a way that raises some questions that I'd like to explore. Just last month, in a meeting on August 19th, 2021, with the NCUA's newly formed Climate Financial Risks Working Group, Mr. Harper noted, and I quote, "The credit union's field of membership is often tied to a specific worksite or an industry like an oil refinery or agriculture," end quote. And then a separate quote, "To remain resilient, such credit unions will need to consider adjusting their fields of membership, altering their loan portfolios, or protecting the collateral that backs their homes," end quote. I hope that these quotes are not intended to suggest that there should be an allocation of credit based on perceived climate risks, and I look forward to exploring that with Mr. Harper. Turning to the Ex-Im Bank, Ms. Pryor has been nominated to serve as the first vice president, and Mr. Hernstadt's been nominated to serve on the board of directors. I continue to remain deeply skeptical of the Ex-Im Bank and its mission and its role in the global economy. Since joining the Senate, I've advocated for sensible reforms to Ex-Im, but proponents of Ex-Im continue to block these reforms. In my view, it was ill-advised for Congress to reauthorize Ex-Im in 2019 for an historic 7 years without a major reform at all to protect federal taxpayers, and taxpayers ultimately bear the risk that is taken by Ex-Im Bank. And let's be clear, Ex-Im wins business by either systemically underpricing the risk that private markets would otherwise absorb or taking on risk that private markets wouldn't bear at any price. Since 2018, Ex-Im's default rate has tripled to 1.5%, and it may soon breach the 2% statutory caps on defaults. Now, Congress has laid out a clear corrective measure in the event that the default rate cap is breached, and that is that Ex-Im must temporarily freeze lending that exceeds its current book of business until the default rate drops back below the 2% statutory cap. Unfortunately, the Biden administration wants to avoid such reasonable taxpayer protections. Instead, the Biden administration is asking that Congress double the Ex-Im Bank's default rate cap to 4%. So instead of fixing a default problem, the Biden administration wants to ignore the problem of rising defaults by changing the metrics and simply tolerating still more defaults. But as I say, these defaults can lead to taxpayer bailouts of Ex-Im, as has happened in the past. As part of the Ex-Im's reauthorization in 2019, Congress created a new Ex-Im China program to compete with the People's Republic of China and its massively subsidized export credits. Just as I feared then, the administration is now proposing that we engage in a race to the bottom with the Chinese government of all people. Specifically, as the Chinese government increases their giveaways to their exporters, the administration is looking to match those giveaways at the expense of U.S. taxpayers. We shouldn't be competing with China by adopting their worst practices. This is not the way to win a competition with the Chinese Communist Party. I'm concerned that propping up exports for this program will lead to further government subsidies. A U.S. export economy dependent on federal credit subsidies is not a recipe for long-term success. Rather, it leads to crony capitalism and the ossification of an economy. And of course, there's already crony capitalism at play in Ex-Im financing. Take, for example, one transaction that Ms. Pryor voted for in 2021. It's a deal guaranteeing an $85 million loan from J.P. Morgan to Qantas Airline for the purpose of buying jet engines from General Electric. So let's see. J.P. Morgan is the largest bank in America. Qantas is the largest airline in Australia. General Electric is one of the largest industrial companies in the world. Why do these companies need the American taxpayer to subsidize their deal? The obvious answer is they don't. These are some of the biggest, most sophisticated companies in the world with full access to the capital markets every single day of the week. Now, I recognize that my views are not the consensus views on this committee. I would prefer that we did not have federal taxpayers subsidizing these transactions at all. But still, I would hope that there's at least an agreement among our nominees that EXIM should not be the lender of first resort. And as required per statute, EXIM, and I quote, should supplement and encourage and not compete with private capital, end quote. I look forward to hearing Ms. Pryor and Mr. Hernstead on this aspect of EXIM activity and their plans should they be confirmed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.